technique. And to me, there are three different things that you do in the short game. So the first shot I would show them would be a shot where there's no wrist action on either side of the ball. Okay, some people call it a one lever stroke or whatever. So go ahead, Jeff, set up to the ball for me. And this would be a shot that they would play when they're up close to the edge of the green. You know, normally play the ball about the center of the stance, hands slightly forward to where the club's in line with their left wrist, and then basically I try to get their upper arms to stay fairly close to the side of their chest, and then basically let the club go back and through, keeping the shaft in line with the left arm. So no wrist action on either side of the ball, keeping the club head below their hands on both sides of the ball, and having the club move on a slight arc back and through. So just hit a couple there for me. Just to kind of chip them out of the green. I'm not really just technique. Okay, now just a little shorter motion. We can try to hit it maybe half the ball. Yeah, not even there. Just a little bit. So I'd basically just try to put my hands on here, try to get them to feel about the length of the swing I'd want them to make back and through. And just get him to hit a few shots like that, just to try to understand. And I would try to get your arms a little closer. That way, not let the arm run too far away from this one. So I'd have you hit a few shots, just trying to keep. I think it's important on these shorter ones, really on all the short shots, is to keep the upper left arm fairly close to the side and not let it run away from you. It's where the club gets too far out to the right and the handle gets too far away from the upper body. Okay, so I'd have them hit a few more. Go ahead, hit one more for me. You ever use a band? Use a band. I'm just going to have you hit a few. Just practice one for me a couple times. Just a little less. Get out your hands a little bit. Practice one. Okay, let's stand closer. Okay, so this would be shot number one. Go ahead and do one more for me. Okay, so I'd go a little less on both sides. You see how high your club's finishing, how it's finishing high in this way? I would try to do a little less backswing and just, again, try to keep the arms a little closer, try to get the club to finish a little lower. Let's go ahead and put the club right on the ground. Practice. Good. Practice. There you go. So he said he feels like he's flipping because he's been going that way. So as long as the club doesn't pass your hands, eventually it's gonna go past your hands, right? But at impact, we want it to be lined up, to slightly leaning forward, keeping that. I don't want you to feel like running the club out so much. So this is a typical good player mistake, in that they'll lean the shaft too much forward. They'll get the arms running too much off the chest. Gets too much lean. Where your average player is going to do the opposite, right? They're going to have the club passing their hands too much. So with him, I'm a little more into the left arm staying connected, trying to get the club to swing a little more in a circle, keep the hands a little closer. The average player may be a little bit different. They may have to feel like the hands are leading a little bit more. But again, giving the student whatever they need. I like the feet narrow. Why would it be better to have a narrow stance on the short shots?
Body movement.
Less body movement, keeps them more centered. I like the feet slightly open. Why would you like them open? A little easier to keep the club on plane on your through swing so it doesn't go so much down the line. So I like a narrow open stance. I like the ball about in the center. I like to see the hands, for most shots, slightly in front of the ball. And then I like the club to stay on plane back and through, which basically, if you go ahead and set up there, where the shaft basically goes back and through on this shot, staying right on the shaft. So if you set up to that ball for me, Jeff. I would just have him try to feel like the club stayed on the plane going back and then more on the plane going through. So like if you do your normal follow through, you'll see how the club wants to kind of come off that. So I would get him to try to feel that. So that might be his lesson, just to try to keep that connected.
Get the hands maybe just a little higher on the shoulder shot.
If you're going really short, like if you're right up next to the edge of the green, I'll even do some where you kind of set with your putting grip, put it up on the toe, and do it that way. So that's shot one, would just be no wrist on either side of the ball. Then shot two would be to hinge some on the backswing. What things would you hinge on the backswing? Two things we're going to hinge going back. We're going to let the right arm shorten a little bit and a little bit of hinge in the left wrist. Okay, so go ahead and set up. And I talk a lot about the right arm. I think the right arm isn't talked a lot about in the short game, but I like to see the right arm again stay close. I like to see the right arm shorten slightly, and then set some angle in the left wrist like that. And then on the way through, again, try to feel like the chest turns, try to keep the arms on the chest, let the pelt go over here. So some people call it a hinge and hold, some people call it a set and turn. It's just basically hinging the club and then using your pivot to hit it on the way through. So hit a couple of those. These will go a little further.
Set up the same.
Yeah, pretty much the same. A little closer to it. You set plenty going back. You don't need to set it. So with him, he's a tall guy. His arms like to run off the side, so I might even hold his club up here like that. I'll pivot through. Again, I don't like that big high finish on everything. I think most people do better when their approach is high to low rather than low to high. So more up on the back swing, more low on the follow through. There you go. So I would emphasize going back, get him to understand. Just hold a little bit, pivot through, up lower, and go to the left like that. So what would this do versus the first shot?
A little more height in the air.
More height, more distance, right? So the student would understand that as you add levers, all of a sudden the ball is going to go a little bit longer. So do a couple there.
Heads up. Or put a helmet on.
Right, just right, and let it set. Better. Okay. A little high. Go ahead, see a little low. And to me,
This be the same with the 60 and everything.
so this is where I'm trying to get them to understand, how the different levers work, how it's going to affect how far the ball goes. And I get them to understand on this shot, basically I'd want the right arm to fold, the club would go a little higher going back. You're still turning and trying to keep the club low through the hit. Hinge it up a little bit. Pretty good. It's tough for you to do, isn't it? Okay, so that would be shot 2. So no wrist was the first one. Hinge, set an angle, hold it going through. And then what would be the last one?
Hinging on both sides.
Hinge and let it release, right? So what's that going to do to it?
More higher, more distance still.
Yeah, a little higher, a little softer. And then you always have to get them to understand that on the first one where there's no wrist, there's just a small pivot with the upper body. And then as you add a little bit more hinge, all of a sudden now the feet, the knees, and the hips are going to become involved. So the shorter shots, there's going to always be a pivot, but there's going to be less pivot on the shorter ones than the longer ones. Okay, so this one, go ahead and set up to it. And this one you can go ahead and finish up higher. So go ahead and let it hinge going back. Good at impact here. And then rotate that hinge, finish a little higher that way. Don't lose any sergeant balls. Don't go over the fence. So if I was analyzing his swing, if you guys were looking at it from over here, what would you say about his wrist action going back?
It's still pretty good.
Pretty tight in the arms and a lot of angle in wrist. I'd like to see him soften his arms and set
Like
a little bit.
Too much angle, too great of an angle.
Yeah, it's like your arms are straight and you're really setting
Oh,
on an
really?
angle like that. So just to be a little softer, try to see if you can fold the arm and let the shaft
Like
soften
a
a little bit.
dead hand shot.
Not really dead hand, but to me you're kind of out here like this and you've got a lot of angle like that. I'd like to see you get your arms a little closer and just relax it. Just kind of let the club set. A little more bend here, a little less set in your wrist. Fold a little more.
So you like this arm to come in?
Just stay closer, not pull back. Fold more under. Better. Soften that a little bit. And whatever wrist action comes, just soften that, let it fold a little more. Still pretty deep angle, but a little softer arm position. So he sets a lot of angle, which is going to be somewhat more difficult. So hit one where you don't, like you feel like you fold your right arm and don't set your wrist at all. Yeah. Fold the arm a little bit, right? So I'm working on technique now a little bit with it.
Todd, how about choking up and down? Does it vary on the 3 shots?
Yeah, I would say that most people will choke down some. I think that's a preference. I prefer people to choke down more than grip it on the end. That would be my preference. So you see a difference in that technique there? That was really good. You fold the arm more, you get such a deep angle. So your flaw to me would be very straight arms, a lot of angle in the wrist. I'd like to see you get your arms a little softer.
I don't use my hands at all.
Whatever goes in there goes in there, but don't force it. So, you know, he would understand those three shots. You know, the no wrist shot, the hinge and kind of hold, and then the hinge and release. Now, with him as a good player, I would have him do one where he sets some angle and releases it and does a short shot. So if you had to hit the ball up high and hit it a short distance, you know, I would have him open the face a little bit and kind of just fold his arm and release it down low like that. And we'll go through that in just a second. All right, so there's three different levers, right? No wrist, hinge and hold, hinge and let it release a little bit. All right, now once he learns that, then I would teach him a little bit about face angle. So there's three options on the face angle, okay? So we're going to do the second shot. We're going to do the first one where we just keep the face neutral. We're going to do the second one where we hold the face open. We're going to do the third one where we let the face rotate down. Okay? So do the shot number 2.
Just the neutral one?
Just neutral. Neutral would be where the face of the club angles across the plane. So it would be what we call a half roll. Okay? This would be no roll where it faces the sky, and then the full roll would be toe up like that. All right, so do the same technique, and just change your face angle. That's neutral. All right, same shot. Hold the face open this time. All right, get a little too much angle in the wrist. Angle going back. Better. A little behind it. Was that higher?
Yep.
Now the same thing this time. Try to feel like you're going to turn it down. It's almost like you're trying to hit it straight, hit a draw, and hit a fade. So you see he's three different trajectories. High, low, medium, based on how he rotates his face. So he could take one club and he would have three different shots he could play with three different face angles. Right? He could play no wrist either back and through, and he could do it with an open face, square face shot. But most of those would be neutral. He could do hinge and hold, open face, square face, and kind of turn down face, and then he could do the release the same thing. Now normally when you're trying to hit it longer, usually you're going to play more of a standard open face. You're not going to play many of the turn down ones, but I want him to understand how to control trajectory through face angle. That makes sense? So just getting him to understand how this club works. Now, for an average player, you know, I might give him three different clubs. All right, I might say, okay, when you want to make it go lower, use less loft. Do that. Want to go medium high, use medium loft. If you want to go high, use your most lofted club, and just give them one technique to use. So what we're going to do is we have a ball right here. So with my amateur golfers, what I'll say is, okay, wherever the ball is, if we're going to go to that first flag right there, what I want you to do is I want you to visualize where halfway is. And I put a tee out there about where halfway is. Okay? So I tell them, wherever halfway is, if you have a lot of room between the edge of the green and halfway, you can play a lower shot. You're going to play a lower shot. If you want to land it around the tee, you'll play kind of a mid-trajectory shot. If you want to land it beyond the tee, you play a high shot. Or if you want to land it short, you can play less lofty club, mid-lofty club, high lofty club. Just so they have an understanding, because most of them don't know what club to use half the time, okay? So with a good player like you, I want you to go to that first flag right there.
Even with an amateur, you like them using a whole bunch of clubs, or you think it's easier for some people to use one?
I think it depends. I think most amateurs, you get one technique and change the clubs, and good players, you'll change technique more. Okay, so and if it was a beginner, I might say you're going to use your 52-degree or your pitching wedge, and you're going to visualize where halfway is, and you're just going to play your standard shot and try to land it halfway, just to take all the guesswork out. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a neutral shot. We're going to try to land it right where that tee is. Okay?
So you're saying halfway
From where the ball is to the flag. Right. Okay? Don't land it just a little past the tee, one a little past the hole. Okay? All right, so do another one.
Same thing?
Same thing. So this would be his kind of neutral shot. Okay? Now, you always have to factor in a little bit green speed, going uphill, downhill, things like that. But for this particular shot, this worked out pretty well. And then I would say, okay, now I want you to use the same club if it was a good player, and I want you to land the ball short of the tee and make it go close to the hole. So what would you do to do that?
You want me to land in front of the tee?
Between the edge of the green and the tee and get it close to the flag with the same club. So what would be a couple things you could do?
Well, keep my hands farther ahead, de-loft it.
So by moving the ball back in your stance and moving the shaft forward, what does that do to the loft? Decreases it. So they need to understand that, where the ball is. It's not so much where the ball is, it's where the shaft angle is in relation to where the ball is. Because you can move the ball back, and if you release it early, you can actually hit it higher. So moving the ball back basically gets the hands more forward. All right, so you can move the ball back or over the other thing we just talked about.
Release.
Just turn the face down. When you close the face, it tends to make the ball go a little lower. So if you wanted to, if it was a real sticky green or it was wet and you needed to feel like you didn't want the ball to check, you could do a little bit more turn down. If you're trying to land it into a hill or something, you want to make sure it goes up the hill. Just turn it down just a little bit. All right, so which one are you going to do? Are you going to do a little
Do the runner.
Okay. Right, so he's going to play it back a little bit. Do a little runner. You got a bad hop. Play it back a little bit. So where did that ball land in relation to the tee? Short of it. But because it was a lower trajectory and he had more overspin on it, it got to the hole. All right? Now hit one past the tee. So now open the face a little bit, open your body a little. Take a little bigger swing and hold the face open. Okay? Pretty good.
Todd,
Yes.
do your tour pros have a preference for the way they do this, like as a standard, like one of your three basic?
Well, I would say the majority of shots they play would be shot 2. Where they hinge it and they hold it. And they play different club faces with that.
How about for putting a heat to spin? It's gonna hit that low skipping slider. How do we tell people how to do that?
Most people don't need to do that. I think to do that you have to be very shallow. You have to have a lot of lean in the shaft and you have to have a lot of speed. So you have to really release it from a shallow angle with the shaft leaning forward. And
With like Brant, like he's so natural and slow, and
Mhm.
you guys, I know you guys, a lot of foot game, a lot of reaction drills, like 7 and 9, doing something like that.
Mhm.
How much fundamental are you ever giving him in a tournament game? Any fundamental? I want to see your elbow here, knee here. It's basically, I like your shot. Let's just do it. Because you got the tip and you're getting there talking to him.
it's a great question. Brant is gifted with probably as good a hands as anybody I've ever taught. I mean, he's very handsy. He sets a lot of angle and releases a lot of stuff. He has a lot of speed. Everything he does is very fast. So with him, I say there's kind of two worlds for him. There's the Brant world where if it's a specialty shot and he wants to feel it, I let him do his deal if he really can see it and feel it. If he's a little unsure, then we go to a little more structure and try to feel like he's not quite as handsy and a little bit more fundamentally sound, if you would say, or a little bit more structured in what he does. He hates that world, but he needs to get into it a little bit more because he uses a 60 everywhere. Everywhere around the green he's at 60. He hits all different shots. Now, like if he was going to that back pin up there, he would hit a 60 and fly it up over this ridge and spin it up there too. It's just what he sees. He doesn't like messing with hills. At tournaments, if he's making good contact and he's getting the ball trajectory control good, we just hit a lot of different shots and let him feel it. If it's a little off, we'll do minor things. Normally for him, it's he gets a little lifty and outside, so we'll work a little on trying to get the club a little more on plane. But around the green, he's pretty good, and so I don't get too much into that. More than anything, what I'll do with him is kind of what we're going to do here in a minute. Is I'll just have him hitting shots to different targets and getting them to see them and feel them and get how the ball reacts off the face and how much it releases on the greens. stuff like that. But it's a good question, and I don't think there's an absolute. I don't say all the time I'm doing it, all the time I'm doing that. It kind of seems where it is with his game and where he is with his comfort level.
You have the structure that you need with the rest of the shot.
Yeah, if he's got a tough shot, I mean, he knows what he needs to do. The shots he struggles with is a shot from here to that ball right there, or that second. I mean, just a very straightforward, easy shot. You know, he uses that 60, and sometimes he'll nip it too much, and he'll leave it 6 or 8 feet short. So I'm trying to get him to go a little more dead-handed and take some of the speed out and some of the spin off, so he can be a little more consistent on that. Because that at Augusta this year, that cost him the first day. He was spinning it too much, and the ball was checking, and he was leaving a lot of shots short. So on Friday afternoon, we went out and worked a lot on, you know, just trying to get a more dead-handed shot, not having so much spin, so the ball would release a little better. And he did a lot better on the weekend with his short shots. But you got to be careful with some guys, because some guys need structure and I need to land it here. He doesn't even look at a spot. I mean, some players just look at the whole shot and they just feel it and hit it. Other players have to look at an area to land the ball in. They see 2 parts. So it kind of varies from player to player. But I think your more creative players look at the whole shot. They don't look at trying to land it here or whatever. They kind of visualize it and can do it.
Did you ever try to change that at any point, like tell them to take a less lofted club?
We've tried, right?
Oh, you've tried.
I've tried. We go out every year and we do before Augusta, and I always say, you know, the easy ones are the ones we need to get better at. So we go out and we do this. We take 5 balls and we'll chip them from a spot, and we'll take the 2 close ones away and the 2 farthest ones away, and we'll put the middle ball there. And then he'll do it with a 60. And then we'll take like a pitching wedge and do the same shot. Always the pitching wedge wins every time on every shot, and he still won't do it. It's just, you know, he's afraid that, you know, everything he does is with a lot of speed. So when you give him a club that doesn't have a lot of loft, he's afraid it's going to get away from him. And I'm trying to get him out of that, depending on spin all the time, but he's pretty good at it. So it's probably a battle I'll never win.
Did he talk about that with you?
Oh yeah.
Or is it just that in the heat of the moment he's jacked and he wants
He's just
to hit
worried.
hard?
He knows he's going to get fast. He knows he's going to be aggressive, and he's just not comfortable taking something off it and do it. So we're working a little on technique to try to get it to where he can play a little more open with the face, still be aggressive, yet still hit a less spinning type shot. So those are some of the things. But I think one of the key things that you have to understand is that you have to. Everybody could come up here and hit this ball to that flag and hit. Everybody could hit a little bit different shot and get it close. Whatever you see and whatever you feel to produce that. Now your average player, they really don't know what to do, so they need to know basically what club to use, where they need to land it, how much swing to make, what speed to go at, and then get consistent with doing that. Where we can have you just hit 3 different shots. You hit the mid one that landed by the tee, went close. You hit the one you carried short of the tee and it rolled up close, and you hit the one that carried up there. All 3 got close. Which one's the best one?
Can you review the manner what you how you reserve shots?
First is no wrist on either side of the ball, and then set the angle and kind of hold it going through, and then set it and release it.
Do you have a way to edit dress in the same position for all 3 of those?
Depends on the more you lean left, the steeper you're going to get. I'm not big on getting a lot of lean to the left, because when I see people lean left, they get up very quickly and they get steep on it. They stick the leading edge in the ground, and I think most people do better when they can use a little of the bounce of the club to make it go up.
How much weight is that?
60%. Yeah, I don't really, a lot of people like to get the head way forward, lean the shaft way forward, but I don't like it real steep. I like it coming in a little shallower where you can nip it. I did an outing one year for, can't remember who it was for, but I did it with Tom Kite, and he had a great short game, and we were on the chipping green like this. I said, Tom, what do you think is the most important thing in the short game? I mean, what do you like to do? He goes, I like every chip to roll like a putt. So yeah, that makes sense. He said, I don't want any surprises. I want it to come off the same way, release the same way. So that makes sense. And then the next year I did the same clinic with Tom Watson. And I said, what do you try to do in the short game? He goes, I want every shot around the green to be hit with as little spin as possible. So those guys, they didn't like to use the spin, and I think we get a little enamored, especially kids, with spinning the ball. But spin's inconsistent. It's hard to spin it exactly the same way every time. So what they're doing is they're using trajectory and things like that to make the ball stop, as opposed to a lot of spin. So, and Brant's a little bit that way, where he likes to spin. He likes the cool shot to hit in there, as opposed to the more predictable one. But that's kind of what he sees and what he feels, and he's pretty good at it. and he can hit the miraculous shot. You know, he can hit the one off a really tight lie to a close pin and shoot it up in the air and grab it.
On the third one, when you said Senator likes to spin it, and when you're talking around the downswing, he's very aggressive, and the club is dumping in the ground.
Yeah. Here, take this club. I'll show you. This is a little shot that he does really well, that we've worked on. So let's say we're gonna go this pin right here. You guys kind of back up a little bit. You can hit some. So what we're gonna do is a lot of people when they hit a flop shot, they make a lot of arm swing and they make a big movement. And what happens is they either slow down or they get nervous and accelerate and it goes too far. So what I'll do is I'll have open the face a little bit, get them to bend their right arm on the backswing, set a little angle, and then from there try to release their right hand and their right arm to where the club gets in line. So they're using the bounce of the club and just try to thump the ground behind the ball and get it to spin up the face. So it's like a bunker shot. Yeah. So not much arm swing for you. You got to keep this elbow in. You guys are brave over there. You're really gonna. All you're gonna do is just kind of let this arm set and release it like that. You gotta have speed and it's got to get real closer to the challenge, closer to your line, moving closer to the ball. Set your right arm and release the flank.
That'll be a chunk.
Pretty good. Get a little behind it. Give me a little more speed with the club head. Release the club head a little bit harder. I want to hear a little more noise when it hits that ground. Set a little more and release the arm a little more. Faster. Okay, now a little bit. Wow. Go a little bit less swing now.
You're out.
Yeah. You can hit. We got a contract for you.
Good glove and good arm. Padres could use it.
You see how that's not a lot of motion, but you can get a lot of spin on it and get the ball up in the air. And like out on tour, when the grass is really tight like that, you know, if you start getting the leading edge into the ground, it's gonna stick in there. So what those guys have learned is that you use the flange of the club and you can get some speed down there. The ball can, the more speed you get, the more it goes up with spin on it. So it's a good little shot to have versus somebody making a big old flop shot. So it's kind of a hinge and release, but it's a low finish. Open it up a little more this time. Get your hands a little less. A lot of bounce for 6. Just try to land it between the edge of the fringe and the flag. That's why I think you get a little too far away from it. Get a little closer to it. Now look how high that finish. Finish low. You want to kind of nip that round. There you go. Very nice. You know, and you can get to a point where you can actually do it with just your right hand. You know, give yourself a good lie and you just open it up like that. And just get where you can, you kind of release the knuckles up, but you kind of feel like you're leading with the heel of that club this way. And just kind of slide it into there. Anybody have any questions on this? So basically what I would have him doing.
So Todd, if you got a guy that likes to cut, you got a guy that likes to hit the big flop swing.
Yeah.
Where do you start working with him to cut it down? Just like the one arm?
Well, I would have him. A little less bounce. You took it for battery life 56. But if you got the face really open and you could get to where you could just cock your wrist like that and uncock it, you should be able to slide with a 4. This one should work good. So you can get it to where you get a little more spin on it. But what I have people do first is understand that you don't want to have a lot of.
Don't get the big shoulder turn, right?
Yeah, you just want to get to where they can just kind of learn to just cock the wrist and slide it under. You see, I got a pretty good amount of spin on it.
Yeah.
That's a 56. So when you can teach them that it's not the big high finish that makes it go high, it's the face being open and learning how to Now I don't want this.
Yeah.
They have to learn to release it kind of in line. So it's almost like when I release it, there's almost a stopping point. Because I'm releasing it kind of sidearm like this. So when you look at it from there, you can't go really past that point. Some people, if they really struggle with it, I'll have them put a strong grip on it, open face, strong grip, and then they can't release it that way at all. But when you can get that action on there, really, where you can do that, you can really spin it, get a lot of height on it.
Your right hand there changes.
Yeah, it just stays under. It's just a Hinging actually. That's where you get a lot of your spinning on the ball without a lot of swing. That's much easier to do than what, I hate to see these guys make these big swings like that to go that far. Nothing good's gonna come out of that. So, I showed them how to use the 3 different shots, the 3 different releases. Then the next step would be to do what? We did the teaching part, trying to get his arms a little closer, right? Try to finish lower. And then we did the variations where we did the 3 different trajectories. So now what we do? Transfer, right?
Call it a day.
That was the tough part. That was the transfer part. Okay, so a couple things that I would have him do. One thing we could do is we do what we call a box drill.